Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. Today, we're joined by the wonderful team behind A24's latest movie, Lamb. I wanted to start by introducing Noomi Rapace, along with director and co-writer Valdimar Jóhannsson. And Valdimar, I wanted to start with a question for you because you created what sounds like a really beautiful mood book. And when you watch this film, it's so much about the mood and the tone that it creates. And I heard that it had a lot of poetry and photographs and paintings that you put into it, and was interested in what was so important to you to be able to communicate about the mood and the voice that you wanted this film to have, particularly because I know that was part of what you initially shared with Noomi with her coming on board for the film.
Uh, yeah, for me, I think it's more, it's easier for me to uh, communicate with the image, or, it's because it can be, very hard for me to try to explain something. So it's probably more easy to,
It's pretty remarkable when I started to realize that he's a man that doesn't use words like other people do. Like, he speaks in images and visuals. And when he came to my house and he brought me like the visual book and the script and a book of selected poems from Sean, he just gave me this package, and I went outside and had a cigarette, and I was like, oh, wait, what is it? Like, he's not gonna like pitch it to me, he's not gonna try to sell it to me. And then I was sitting there just looking at all these images that you've been collecting for years, right? And I was just drawn into the story, and I saw the story come to life, and it was just like I started to realize who you are, and and what kind of universe you invited me to. And I feel like it's been beautiful to discover how much you can actually say without words, because our movie is not based on words. It's based on, the communication and the conversations are non-verbal most of the time, like you. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I loved the most about it, and especially the first half of the movie, Noomi, for you, is so much about the unspoken, and the film doesn't go into a lot of detail about this couple, and we know that they don't have children. We get the impression that they've probably tried to have children, and there's been some hardships and some emotional trauma that has stemmed from that, and we don't need to know the details either. And so did you find that there was a lot of creative freedom for you in how you approached your performance and bringing it in a different space, because it's such an internalized performance, and yet you still managed to communicate all of those things to us throughout that entire first half?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Because that was my fear, because it's like she doesn't show much. And she's so, because basically the backstory is like they lost a child, and she can't deal with it. She had to like shut down. So she's quite blank, and she's quite harsh, and she doesn't share a lot. And it's hard to get to know. You don't get emotionally connected to it, really. And I was like, at one point I was like, maybe I'll lose the audience. Maybe like I'm too distant. Like, maybe they won't, maybe it's going to be too late when she finally starts to like, when the movie invites the audience to her inner space, sort of. But then it was like, I remember when I had that, like, it felt like, kind of chills down my spine. And then I was like, you know what? It's not about you. You're a part of this story, and this story is greater than you and your fear. So I felt like I always relied, and I felt so safe within the movie, and that I'm a part of something bigger. So I think that Maria is so connected in the pain and in the grief and in the desperation to be a mother. So I got lost in that rather than thinking as Noomi, that kind of took over.
And Valdimar, you use the location and the landscape so beautifully in the film. And, a lot of times when there's a building suspense and tension, it's about shadows and the things that you can't see. But in this film, it's so much about what you can see, and also really utilizing Icelandic weather, where we have those beautiful mists coming onto the screen. And I know that in lambing season, there's also only a couple of hours of darkness, so it is mostly light at that point as well. Was it always something that was important to you to really be able to use the lightness and being able to show everything and use that to create the suspense?
Yes, from the beginning we decided that we should have like it should always be bright outside. Even though maybe people would not understand it. Why but it's always when they're going to bed, you know, it's like a daylight almost outside. But somehow you know, this period, it's so magical.
It's magical, and it's it kind of it has a really deep impact on you, because your body doesn't know what to believe, you know, and you get kind of trapped in this you know, between, it's almost like life and death. It's like strange. I felt like we started drifting, and I couldn't sleep, so it's like like total insomnia, and it's like taking care of this baby lamb. And I was like, you know, my dreams, I managed to sleep maybe 1 or 2 hours per night, just like using off. And then I was like, you know, I had really messed up dreams, kind of from your visual book. So I would blame you for it. Yeah.
And you both have connections to growing up with sheep farming. Noomi, you grew up on a farm with sheep farming, and Valdimar, I believe your grandparents were sheep farmers as well. And the film also really captures that idea of like, this is just the day to day. And, you know, we see these two characters doing things like laying hay out, and it's just something that you can tell they've done thousands and thousands of times before, you know, and even the birthing scene, I know that you were birthing a lamb for the first time, but that still has the essence of like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And, you know, you're almost not even looking at the things that you're doing as well. And so what were the important day-to-day details that you really wanted to be able to include in that representation in the film?
I mean, both of us wanted it to feel real. Mm-hmm. The only odd element is Ata. Yeah. You know, it's like everything else needed to be as realistic and as rooted in reality as possible. So, I mean, you were very nervous what the Icelandic farmers would say at the premiere, because that's like, you know, of course, you know, it's very, I get so happy, Mara, that you like our film, but like, you know, I was so nervous for what they're like farmers would think, because they are hard critics.
Mm. No, and you know, the farmers that I have talked to, they thought it was, they believed it, you know.
And you also, Noomi, use that idea of like the actions and the things that your character does as a way of her kind of having those survival instincts that you were talking about, and that it feels like that's how she really manages to get through the day to day, by just focusing on these tasks. If I can just do these things, then we get through to tomorrow. And so how were you thinking about the way in which you wanted to express that through a lot of just those day-to-day motions that repeat throughout the film?
That is my, you know, my grandmother in Iceland. She's gone through a lot of heartbreaks, and she just keeps on going. You know, you stick to the routines, and slowly you'll, you know, find your way back, you know. And then I feel like that's probably, you know, something that I adopted and kind of holding on to myself. You know, it's like, if I get bad news, if I'm sad, I just keep on going. I stick to my routine. And I feel like Maria is very, you know, she has this great strength, but also, you said coldness, but you know, that she's a doer. You know, she can't allow herself to feel, because then everything will fall apart. And then I would say that, you know, but you won't heal that way. You know, it's like, that is not a way to deal with loss or grief. And I think that Ata, when she arrives, Maria kind of straight away knows that this is a possibility. This could be a way. This could be the bridge to happiness and to light again. And she grabs it, and she's not gonna let go.
And Valdimar, talking of Ata, I wanted to ask about the genesis of how you came up with that visually, because I know that some of it was cutting out different collages of you know, young kids and babies and pictures of lambs and putting that together. And how did you know when you finally found the right visual look for that? Because if it hadn't worked, the entire film would have fallen apart.
Yes, well, you know, we knew that, you know, it was a lot of, you know, a big risk, you know, but we were working with so amazing team, you know, both, you know, we were working with to creating Ata. We were working with, so 10 kids, 4 lambs, and puppets. And then we had also a very nice company in Sweden, Fredrik Nord. He was, you know, and Peter Hjort was with us on set. So somehow, you know,
it was not like it was I don't think we had green screen once. You know, it was very real. And I feel like you always knew what she was going to look like and how you wanted it to be.
Yeah, because from almost the first drawings and of Ata, it's very similar, but of course much better than my drawings. But somehow it's the same creature,
Were there a lot of logistical challenges that came with the way that you filmed it, because you weren't relying on CGI throughout the entire thing? So you would film a scene with a baby, and then all of a sudden you have a lamb, and then you're waiting for a lamb to fall asleep in a tiny bucket before you can actually get the shot that you need.
We tried to do everything that we could do on camera, but of course we used...
But yes, it required a lot of patience. I had to work on.
Yeah, no, I'm super happy, how patient my actors were,
It was not, we were not running the set. We were always waiting for an animal to fall asleep or to to be in a better mood. Like the cat was the worst. Like the cat was just total diva. I don't know how many times we were waiting for the cat to do what we wanted, and he still didn't do it.
Did it influence the sound design at all? Because obviously there's a lot of very intentional sounds of sheep's bleeding throughout the film, and the sound is used in different ways as to how much we hear it and when we hear it. But I also imagine that there were certain times where you probably just couldn't re-record the entire dialogue of the movie.
Sound is very important for me. I think it's almost like 50% of the film somehow, because you can do so many things with. So also somehow you can control, what kind of feelings you want the audience to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very quiet film at the beginning, and then the first time that there's any sort of loudness is when you have Noomi in the field like shouting at the sheep to go away. Did you always know the first moment when you wanted to kind of start adding those louder sounds and having that sort of experience for the audience?
Yeah, I think, when we were editing the film, then we saw, where we should have this, it's also in the beginning, it somehow we knew where we should have it, when we were working on it, because we were also adding some sound while we were editing the film.
Yeah. And for you, Noomi, in all of the scenes with Ata, there's never a single moment where your character even slightly questions, what she's doing and what this relationship is, even the moment that the lamb is born before we've seen the rest of it. There's that really quiet look that you give your husband in the film as well, which again just communicates so much at that point. Was it really important to you that there's never even a slight flicker of, maybe this isn't quite what I thought, maybe this isn't the right idea, that she's fully steadfast at every second?
Yes. I mean, that's how she kind of just, it's almost like someone gives her the key to a new room, to a new house, and she just moves in, and she's not hesitant. There's no doubt. And that's why it's so dangerous when Peter comes, because he's a direct threat against the happiness. And she's holding on to that happiness. And even though I think she always knew that it wouldn't last. She knew that, she took someone that doesn't belong to her. And that it would be, that she would probably lose it or be punished for it somehow. But she's holding on to it as long as she can.
And as much as she's experiencing happiness in a way that she probably hasn't for such a long time, there's also the pain that comes along with it, even from what you're saying about how she knows that there is going to be an ending to this and it can't go on forever. And it's interesting looking at that in juxtaposition to the beginning of the film, where as much as she's not an exuberant, joyful character, she also doesn't allow herself to feel and experience her pain. And so how did you want to explore that relationship that she has with pain, particularly given the past and the emotional trauma that she's still processing and hasn't necessarily confronted up until this point?
I think that she's, it's a combination of guilt for not being able to protect her first child. and also anger and disappointment in her husband, because I think he was the one who was with Atta, our firstborn Atta, when she died. So it's this the emotions are so complex, and she loves him, and she wants to find a way to forgive and let go. And I think Atta, the new Atta, becomes like the emotional oxygen that allows her to be in those rooms of anger, of disappointment, of joy, and also to feel like a woman again, that, you know, she opens up and she's having sex again, and she's dancing, and she's like slowly coming back to life. And I think in the end, when, you know, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but like the pain is even greater, but she's like back in life, you know, she's alive again. And then that is the beginning of a new chapter. And that is also to let go of the old. And I think I have this kind of beautiful image in my head of lobsters when they change. Do you know when they grow out of their shell, they have to kind of squeeze out of the old shell, so they kind of swim in between two rocks, and they get stuck, and then they have to, like, it's super painful apparently, they kind of force themselves out of the old shell, and the new skin is super sensitive until it hardens. And it's almost like Maria is going through that kind of rebirth, like letting go of the old, peeling off, shredding, but she's also alone in the end. But she has this eternal, almost like Mother Earth instinct of you know, she's very powerful, even though the pain is great.
And did you find it easy to find what the body language within her marriage and within the relationship is? Because there's a real difference in her having a conversation with her husband at the beginning and just gently touching him near the shoulder, as opposed to the way that they interact and their body language kind of intertwines and gets a little bit closer later in the film once Atta comes along.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you have, if you are in a place of shock or trauma, you cannot allow yourself to be tender, not to yourself and not to anyone else. And I think, you know, a child or a pet, you know, some of my friends that have support dogs or like animals, that's like the line, that's the connecting tissue that makes it possible to open up and to show love again and to be given love. I think, you know, I think Ingvar has probably been trying to be more loving and sensitive and soft with her, and she hasn't been able to receive it or take it, so she's been quite harsh with him. Would you agree?
Yeah, you know, I think he is willing to do everything to make you happy.
Yeah.
Was it just as important for you, Valdimar, to really explore the father relationship with Atta as it was the mother relationship? Because very frequently when we see stories exploring some of these themes and topics, it's very much focused on the woman. And in this, you really managed to capture that essence with both of these characters in such complexity.
You know, I'm quite sure how to answer this one.
I mean, I feel like you have we've been talking a lot about like women in Iceland, that it's a very equal society. When I moved there when I was 5, and it was like a female president, you know, and Vigdis Finnbogadóttir was like super powerful. And I was like, this is how the world is like. And then I kind of thought that was the reality for most countries. And then I moved back to Sweden. I was like, wait a minute, it's all men everywhere. And I feel like that's how we both kind of grew up, you know, with like strong grandmothers and strong mothers. And I feel like the power balance and the strength between those two, Maria is the doer. Maria drives the tractor. Maria is delivering the baby lamb. Maria is marking the baby. And he is in the kitchen, you know, cooking. So it is a bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, a part of it I probably take from my grandparents, because they had so beautiful relationship, you know. There were like no man's job, no women's job. They did everything together. They just shared everything. There was so much respect, you know, between them. So I think, you know, that is somehow relationship that I wanted to, you know, I thought would be nice for Ingvar and Maria to have. But, you know, then we add this, you know, grief or sorrow on that.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask about some of the camera choices in the film as well, because there's lots of interesting play with where you put the camera, even down to there being one moment where we're watching these two characters down a hallway as they come into the front door, so we don't see them fully in frame until partway through the scene. And I was interested for you, Valdimar, in kind of the choice behind certain camera choices like that, and for you, Noomi, the experience of working on scenes where you're not constantly having the camera close to you as a performer, and the difference that that makes in the journey of filming them.
Me and Eli Aronson, my DOP, we somehow we had planned almost all the scenes. We spent so much time at the farm, and yeah, it was very nice going through the almost all the scenes that we were doing, and so we somehow almost knew always what we, how we wanted to shoot the scene.
It felt like we were just living in this, it felt like a family story, and I was a part of this family, and I wasn't actually thinking about where the camera was. And I wasn't like, it's strange because we were all, it felt like the actors, the crew, the animals were all part of the same body somehow, and it didn't matter. It was like no ego. There was no, we were all like so in synchron, we were so synchronized. And I just felt like it doesn't matter if the camera is shooting me or Lamb or Ingvar. It was like we all, it was this kind of like a dance almost. I've never experienced anything like it. And also there was so non-verbal, it's like it's the bodies, it's the energies, it's the sounds, it's like it's basically every other communication tool except from the language.
Yeah. I also love the use of color in the film as well. And there's a lot of kind of pale hues early on. And then even the scene later where, you have all of them with Ata and they're all watching a sports game and then everybody's dancing. And you have, Noomi's wearing blue, Ata's wearing blue, and you use that color to really signify family and how they've come together in this unit. And so was interested in how color became such a central part of a lot of the choices you made in telling the story as well.
Oh my God, can I just flick in something?
Yeah.
This man doesn't like to make like quick decisions. We have no idea, Mara, how many, like we had this one red dress that I was supposed to wear, and we had like, how many shades of red? We were like, what about this one? He's like, what about this one? So you are very specific with the colors.
Yeah, what we did was we collected like I can't think how many like reference, and out of them Ila made some like what do you say, color
like a palette.
Yeah, palette that we had all the colors that were allowed in our world. So
you created rules, like color rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that scene at all as well for you, Noomi, feels like it's really the height of happiness for your character, and it's the moment that she's her purest self as well. And that particularly feels incredibly visceral as an experience in watching it, because then that's immediately before Peter then tries to threaten that dynamic as well. And were you thinking about it in that same way, that that's kind of the happiest moment that she has throughout this entire journey and wanting to escalate it just a little bit more for her?
Yeah, I mean, I have situations in my own life where you're like, okay, you feel like total freedom, and you feel like this is the moment of like when everything comes together, and then someone tried to kiss you or like someone breaks that, it's like a holy rule, like you're not allowed to do that. You move too close, you cross the line, and it's so, and I love how specific you were about it, and how it was so, he is a threat, and he's a big man, and he traps me in the kitchen, and it was like the perfect kind of balance between him forcing himself on her, but still kind of not being violent or dangerous. So it was this like, and she's been inviting him, or she did used to entertain that, earlier in their lives, but not anymore. So it was like, it's so many gray tones in that relationship. And I just feel like, yes, it was the peak of happiness, but obviously when you are happy and you open up, that's when the shadows from the past will hit you as well. Yeah. And you have to and that forces her to make a decision and to really commit to the love of Ingvar.
Yeah. And then lastly, for both of you, I just was interested in what was kind of the biggest personal challenge for you in terms of making this film and this project.
Wow.
Yeah, for me, it was just, I was so stressed, before we start shooting, because this is my first feature, and I thought everything was a challenge, But what was nice was that working with all these nice people, and also all my actors, they were also helping me. So I felt that everybody was helping each other. So I'm very thankful for that.
I think for me, to give it justice, I always feel this huge responsibility to be faithful to this story and to the character, and to that my duty and my responsibility is to give it all I have. And with this one, I had to peel off lots of layers and go to the most honest and unprotected place in myself. And it's always this fear of not maybe reaching that place, or having the bravery or the tools. But I felt that we did everything together. It was never, I don't think you were alone and I was not alone. It was very much a collaboration, and it's one of the most beautiful ones I've experienced.
Yeah, it's a really, really stunningly beautiful film. And it's also one that, just because of the mood and the tone and the connectivity within the film, that since I watched it, I haven't stopped thinking about it. And I know that that's going to be true for so many audiences for such a long journey with this movie. So I wanted to congratulate you both on everything that you've accomplished with this film. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.